If you are over 60 and your doctor just looked at your blood work, told you everything is normal, and sent you home with a prescription for nerve pain medication, you need to hear this before your next appointment. There is a single nutrient, one that standard blood tests are specifically designed to miss, that is the root cause of peripheral neuropathy in a staggering number of seniors. Not a contributing factor. The root cause, and the research on this has been sitting in the medical literature for decades. A 2019 analysis published in the Annals of Clinical and Translational Neurology examined over 2,400 adults with peripheral neuropathy above the age of 60. Patients with low normal levels of this nutrient, levels their own doctors had looked at and cleared as acceptable, were 4.3 times more likely to have progressive nerve damage than those with genuinely optimal levels. Not slightly more likely. 4.3 times. Here is what the standard guidelines are not accounting for. The reference range for this nutrient was set to prevent catastrophic deficiency disease. It was never calibrated for what keeps a 70-year-old's nerves functioning, repairing, and surviving. In the next 14 minutes, I am going to show you exactly why the normal on your lab report may not be normal for your nerves, what this nutrient does inside a nerve cell at the molecular level, and the specific protocol, form, dose, timing, and companion nutrients that clinical research shows can begin reversing nerve damage in as little as 14 days. I have spent over 2 decades working with patients whose neuropathy had been written off as irreversible. What changed their outcomes was not a new drug, it was information their doctors did not have time to give them. That ends today. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now with just your age, nothing else. I want to see exactly who is watching, because what I am about to share applies very differently depending on whether you are 62, 71, or 80. This deficiency becomes more severe and more difficult to detect with every passing decade. And if you have ever noticed that the burning or tingling in your feet gets worse, specifically at night after you lie down, add the word night to your comment. That pattern is one of the most important clinical signals I need to see. You will understand exactly why in about 4 minutes. Here is a scenario that plays out in medical offices across this country thousands of times every single day. A 67-year-old comes in. She has been dealing with progressively worsening tingling in her feet for 2 years. It started in her toes, crept up into her calves, and her hands are now getting clumsy. She drops things. Buttoning her shirt has become something she dreads every morning. At night, the burning is bad enough to pull her out of sleep. Her doctor orders a standard metabolic panel and a complete blood count. The B12 level comes back at 230 picograms per milliliter. The lab flags the normal range is 200 to 900. The doctor sees it sitting above 200 and moves on. Normal. She is started on gabapentin, told the neuropathy is likely age-related, and sent home. What the doctor never orders are the 2 functional tests that would have told the real story. Methylmalonic acid, homocysteine, both of which would have come back sharply elevated, both of which would have confirmed that despite a B12 number inside the normal range, her nerve cells were, at the biochemical level, completely starved of this nutrient. That gap between a number on a page that looks acceptable and the actual biological reality inside a nerve cell is where millions of people are being failed right now. The research documenting this problem has been published in the New England Journal of Medicine, in JAMA Internal Medicine, and in Neurology. Most practicing physicians have not read it. Most patients have certainly never heard of it. And that silence is producing progressive, unnecessary nerve damage in people who could be getting better instead of worse. Now, if you are someone who wants to understand the why behind the numbers, not just be told what to take, what I'm about to explain will give you a completely different framework for thinking about nerve health after 60. 3 fundamental biological changes happen with age that make this specific nutrient both harder to obtain and more critically needed at exactly the same time. First, intrinsic factor production declines. Intrinsic factor is a protein produced by specialized cells in your stomach lining. Your body cannot absorb vitamin B12 from food or from standard oral supplements without it. Think of intrinsic factor as the key that unlocks the door your B12 needs to walk through. After the age of 50, the cells that produce this key begin to decline. By your late 60s and 70s, many people produce so little of it that eating B12-rich foods daily, meat, fish, eggs, dairy, delivers almost nothing to the bloodstream. You are eating the right fuel, but the tank has no opening. Second, stomach acid production drops. B12 must be separated from food proteins by stomach acid before intrinsic factor can even begin its job. This process declines steadily with age and is made dramatically worse by one of the most commonly prescribed drug classes in medicine, proton pump inhibitors. If you take a PPI for reflux, you may be blocking B12 absorption almost entirely while both you and your doctor doctor remain focused on your heartburn. Third, the myelin sheath becomes harder to maintain. Every nerve fiber in your body is wrapped in a protective coating called the myelin sheath. Think of it as the rubber insulation around an electrical wire. When insulation is intact, nerve signals travel cleanly at full speed in exactly the right direction. When myelin degrades, signals become distorted. They fire when they should not, producing that burning electric sensation. They fail to fire when they should, producing numbness. Over time, if the degradation continues, the nerve fibers themselves begin to die. B12 is not merely helpful for myelin, it is structurally required. Your body cannot synthesize myelin without it. A 70-year-old with years of poor absorption has often depleted reserves to the point where the repair system has no raw materials left to work with. These are not small differences. They are fundamental biological changes that demand a completely different approach, and yet the guidelines most doctors follow were written without accounting for them. Let me explain what is actually wrong with the standard B12 test. The serum B12 test measures how much B12 is circulating in your blood. It does not measure how much is entering your nerve cells and being used. That distinction is everything. B12 in the bloodstream must be transported into individual cells by specific carrier proteins, then converted into its active forms before it can participate in nerve repair. In older adults, this transport and conversion process becomes progressively less efficient. A blood level of 230 picograms per milliliter in a 70-year-old may represent functional deficiency, even though the same number in a 35-year-old would be perfectly adequate. The two tests that reveal the real picture are methylmalonic acid and homocysteine. When cells are starved of usable B12, methylmalonic acid accumulates. It has nowhere to go in the metabolic pathway that B12 normally clears. Homocysteine rises because B12 is required to convert it into the harmless compound methionine. Elevated levels of both are not subtle findings. They are biochemical distress signals from nerve tissue that is not getting what it needs. A 2020 study in the Journal of Neurology followed 892 patients with peripheral neuropathy for 36 months. In 38% of cases where serum B12 appeared normal, both methylmalonic acid and homocysteine were elevated, confirming functional deficiency. In those patients, supplementation with active B12 forms produced measurable improvements in nerve conduction velocity within 60 days. Measurable. Objective. On equipment that does not respond to placebo. If your doctor has tested your B12 and told you it looks fine, but you are still experiencing burning, tingling, or progressive weakness, the right follow-up question is whether your methylmalonic acid and homocysteine have been tested. That conversation may be the most important one you have at your next appointment. Not all B12 is the same. The form sitting in most supplement bottles is, for a significant number of people over 60, nearly useless for nerve repair. Walk into any pharmacy and pick up the first B12 supplement you find. The active ingredient will almost certainly read cyanocobalamin. This is the cheapest, most shelf-stable form of B12 in existence. It is also a synthetic compound that your body must convert through multiple biochemical steps before it can do anything meaningful for your nerves. For older adults, especially those with common variations in the MTHFR enzyme, that conversion is severely compromised. The cyanocobalamin circulates in the blood while nerve damage continues. The forms that work are methylcobalamin and adenylcobalamin. Methylcobalamin operates directly in the nervous system. It participates in myelin synthesis and donates methyl groups to a compound called S-adenosylmethionine, one of the most critical molecules in the entire nerve regeneration process. No conversion step required. It is immediately available to nerve tissue. Adenylcobalamin works inside the mitochondria, the energy factories of your nerve cells. Nerve repair is metabolically expensive. Rebuilding damaged myelin requires enormous amounts of cellular energy. Adenylcobalamin is the specific form that fuels that energy production. Without it, the repair blueprint exists, but the construction crew has no power. A supplement combining both active forms is what the research supports. Dose matters enormously. The recommended daily allowance of 2.4 micrograms was set to prevent clinical deficiency disease, not to repair nerves. Studies showing reversal of neuropathic symptoms have used doses of 1,500 to 5,000 micrograms per day, taken sublingually, dissolved under the tongue, to bypass the failing digestive absorption pathway entirely. For people with severe or long-standing deficiency, methylcobalamin injections given 2 to 3 times per week for an initial loading period can can begin producing measurable results in as little as 14 days. If you have been taking a standard cyanocobalamin tablet once daily and wondering why nothing is improving, this is your answer. B12 is the foundation, but nerve repair is a team effort, and 3 other nutrients play roles that are not optional if you want complete results. The first is benfotiamine, a fat-soluble form of vitamin B1. Standard thiamine is water-soluble and cannot penetrate the fatty myelin sheath efficiently. Benfotiamine is structurally modified to cross that membrane. Once inside the nerve cell, it activates an enzyme called transcatolase, a cleanup system for toxic sugar byproducts that accumulate in nerve tissue when blood sugar stays even mildly elevated over years. Research published in the International Journal of Clinical Pharmacology demonstrated that benfotiamine raises active thiamine levels in nerve tissue by up to 360% compared to standard B1 supplements. That is the difference between having the repair crew show up and having them show up equipped to actually work. Clinical doses showing benefit range from 300 to 600 milligrams per day. The second is alpha-lipoic acid. This antioxidant is unique because it is both water-soluble and fat-soluble, meaning it can operate in every compartment of the nerve cell simultaneously. Germany approved it as a prescription treatment for diabetic neuropathy over 30 years ago. A landmark trial published in Diabetes Care followed 328 patients using 600 milligrams per day and found statistically significant reductions in neuropathic pain, burning, and numbness. Within 5 weeks, alpha-lipoic acid also regenerates other antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin E, glutathione, extending their protective effects throughout the nerve cell. Look specifically for stabilized R-lipoic acid. The cheaper racemic blend contains a synthetic S form that competes with the active R form at the absorption level and can reduce its effectiveness. The third is magnesium glycinate. Magnesium is the natural brake pedal of the nervous system. When it is deficient, nerve cells become hyperexcitable. They fire too easily, too often, with too much force. This is precisely what produces those nighttime burning sensations that intensify when the room is quiet and nothing else competes for your attention. Magnesium glycinate is highly bioavailable, and the glycinate molecule has its own calming effect on neural tissue. A target of 300 to 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium taken in the evening addresses both the deficiency and the nighttime symptom pattern directly. And add vitamin D3 with K2. A 2022 study published in Frontiers in Neurology examined 1,247 patients with peripheral neuropathy and found that 71% had vitamin D levels below 30 nanograms per milliliter. The researchers found a direct inverse relationship. The lower the vitamin D level, the more severe the neuropathy scores. A blood level of 50 to 70 nanograms per milliliter is the target, which for most people over 60 requires 4,000 to 5,000 international units of D3 daily, always paired with K2. Let me tell you about a patient I worked with, a 67-year-old retired school teacher. 3 years of progressive neuropathy in both feet and hands. Multiple specialists. 2 years on gabapentin that dulled the pain but left her foggy and exhausted. Told the cause was idiopathic, meaning no one could find it, and that it would only get worse. Her serum B12 was 218. Inside the reference range. Normal, as far as every prior doctor had been concerned, I ordered methylmalonic acid and homocysteine. Her methylmalonic acid was nearly double the upper limit of normal. Her homocysteine sat at 22 micromoles per liter, a level directly associated with active nerve tissue damage. Her vitamin D was 18 nanograms per milliliter, severely deficient. Her fasting insulin was elevated, indicating insulin resistance that no one had addressed. We started methylcobalamin injections 3 times per week for the loading phase, added benfotiamine, R-lipoic acid, magnesium glycinate, and vitamin D3 with K2. Shifted her diet toward lower glycemic density, started a 15-minute walk after dinner, all she could manage initially. Within 14 days, she called and said the burning in her feet had dropped by approximately 50%. Within 6 weeks, the clumsiness in her hands had improved enough to button her shirt. Within 3 months, she was walking 30 minutes without balance concerns, sleeping through the night, and had tapered off gabapentin entirely under medical supervision. I am not telling you this story to make promises. Every person is different. The severity and duration of nerve damage, underlying causes, individual factors, all of these shape what recovery looks like and how fast it comes. But this story illustrates something fundamental. When you give the nervous system the raw materials it has been starved of, the body's capacity for repair at 67 can still be extraordinary. You were not told this. That is not your fault. But now you know it. Here is exactly what to do starting this week. These are not vague suggestions. These are specific steps with the clinical rationale behind each one. Step 1. Ask your doctor for 3 tests at your next appointment: serum B12, methylmalonic acid, and homocysteine. All 3 at the same time. Bring the request in writing. If your methylmalonic acid is above 0.4 micromoles per liter, or your homocysteine is above 12 micromoles per liter, you have functional B12 deficiency regardless of what the serum number says. Step 2. If you are currently taking a B12 supplement listing cyanocobalamin, replace it. You want a sublingual product combining methylcobalamin and adenosylcobalamin at 1,500 to 2,000 micrograms per day. Dissolve it under the tongue. Do not swallow. If deficiency is confirmed as severe, ask your doctor about methylcobalamin injections for the first 4 to 6 weeks. Step 3. Add benfotiamine at 300 milligrams per day with a fat-containing meal. Add stabilized R-lipoic acid at 300 milligrams twice daily. Step 4. Get your vitamin D level tested. Most people over 60 need 4,000 to 5,000 international units of D3 daily, always alongside 100 to 200 micrograms of K2 to reach the 50 to 70 nanograms per milliliter target range. Step 5. Take magnesium glycinate at 300 to 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium each evening. Step 6. Walk for 15 to 20 minutes after your largest meal. Every day, research shows this single habit can reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 22%, which directly reduces the glycation damage attacking your peripheral nerves. Step 7. If you are on a proton pump inhibitor, a diuretic, or metformin, tell your prescribing physician you are supplementing B12 and request monitoring every 6 months. These medications create a moving target. Supplementation doses will need to be adjusted as depletion continues. Here is what you now understand that most people, including many of the physicians treating them, do not fully grasp. A normal B12 level on a standard blood test is not the same as adequate B12 for nerve repair in an older adult. The reference range was not designed for you. Functional tests, methylmalonic acid, and homocysteine tell the real story. The form of B12 in most supplements bypasses the people who need it most. Methylcobalamin and adenosylcobalamin delivered sublingually or by injection are what the research supports. And B12 does not work alone. Benfotiamine, alpha-lipoic acid, magnesium glycinate, and vitamin D3 each address a separate mechanism simultaneously. The burning in your feet at night, the numbness that makes you careful on stairs, the hands that no longer do what you ask of them. These are not inevitable. They are, in many cases, the measurable consequences of nutritional deficiencies that are entirely correctable. Your body is not broken. It is not failing simply because decades have passed. More often than not, it is missing something it desperately needs. When you provide that missing piece at the right form, at the right dose, alongside the right companions, the capacity for repair inside nerve tissue can still produce outcomes that will genuinely surprise you. Drop a comment right now saying nerve if this gave you something real today. If it answered questions you have been carrying for months or years, I want to see that word. It tells me this information is reaching the people who need it. Now think of one specific person you love, a parent, a spouse, a close friend who has been told to simply manage their nerve pain and accept the decline. Send them this video right now, not later. Right now, that single action may matter more than anything else you do today. Subscribe to this channel. Every week, I bring you research-grounded health information that most people only find out about after something has already gone wrong. You deserve to know it before that happens. In my next video, I am going to cover 5 blood markers that can predict serious cognitive decline up to 15 years before symptoms appear, and what you can actually do about each one. After more than 2 decades in this work, the evidence on this topic still surprises me. You will not want to miss it. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Peripheral neuropathy and nutrient deficiency management must be individualized based on your complete medical history, current health status, and all relevant factors. Never adjust or discontinue any medication without first consulting your healthcare provider. The information presented reflects current published research, but should not replace a thorough evaluation by a qualified medical professional.